You were never supposed to encounter this information this way. Not because it is dangerous, because it activates recognition too early in most people. What you are hearing was not broadcast. It was released, routed through narrow channels, filtered, approved, then allowed to reach you specifically. That distinction matters. Information like this does not circulate freely. It moves when certain internal conditions are met. You did not search for this. You were routed. There is a record associated with you that does not exist in public systems. It is not symbolic. It is not spiritual language. It is procedural, logged, time-stamped, updated quietly over time. It tracks deviation, not failure. Forward deviation, the kind that exceeds acceptable variance. That is why your life did not unfold the way you were told it would. People like you are never blocked loudly. There is no announcement, no rejection letter, no visible denial. Instead, momentum is delayed just enough to remain unnoticed. Pressure is applied without explanation. The path narrows without warning. You interpreted this as struggle. That interpretation was incorrect. What you experienced was containment. At a certain point, and you crossed it long ago, your internal capacity surpassed the stability of your environment. When that happens, acceleration becomes dangerous, not to the system, to you. So the system intervenes by slowing outcomes while strengthening internal architecture. You felt this as exhaustion that sleep didn't fix, confusion that logic couldn't resolve, loneliness that appeared even in company. Others collapse when this begins. Statistically, most do. Their nervous systems misfire, they self-sabotage, they abandon consistency, they beg for relief from something they cannot name. You did not. You kept functioning, not heroically, automatically. That was the first confirmation. You adapted without understanding why adaptation was necessary. You normalized pressure. You learned how to operate while carrying invisible weight. You became competent under conditions that would have dismantled most people. You didn't even realize it was happening. This is why you are different. There were multiple interventions you never saw. Not rescues, adjustments, micro-corrections applied before damage occurred, conversations that didn't happen, opportunities that dissolved at the last moment, losses that felt unfair at the time. Those were not denials. They were insulation. Unfiltered success destroys people like you. Sudden access collapses identity if the internal framework isn't sealed. So what you interpreted as delay was actually reinforcement. Wealth does not arrive loudly for people like you. It arrives when silence can hold it. If this recognition is landing, not emotionally, but internally, mark it. Like the video, not as support, as acknowledgement. That action signals alignment, not engagement. Now understand this clearly. Your confusion was not disorientation, it was compression. When value condenses, it feels heavy before it becomes powerful. People mislabel that sensation as burnout. Burnout comes from depletion. You were not depleted. You were being fortified. There was resistance. Not enemies, not people you can point to. Abstract interference, environmental drag, statistical pressure designed to remove anyone who could not maintain coherence under load. This normally breaks people. You neutralized it by continuing. You woke up anyway. You showed up anyway. You endured cycles that should not have been survivable by your previous metrics. And you did it quietly. Only a few experienced this stage. Fewer still pass through it without becoming bitter, loud, or desperate. You became none of those. You became precise, observant, internally anchored. That shift was recorded. There is a classification for this. You would not recognize the term, but the criteria fits you perfectly. Sustained functionality under invisible pressure without external validation. That profile is rare, and rarity attracts protection. This is why the money has not rushed in yet. Not because it is absent, because it is being staged. Uncontrolled arrival destabilizes identity, so the system waits until the internal framework can carry expansion without distortion. You thought you were waiting. You were being calibrated. The loneliness you felt was not abandonment, it was separation. Your internal frequency no longer matched your environment. Mismatches create noise. Noise drains energy, so the noise was reduced. Others wouldn't survive that silence. You did. There was a moment, you may remember it as a night or a season, when something inside you stopped asking for permission. You didn't announce it. You didn't celebrate it. You simply stopped negotiating with doubt. That moment was logged as a transition. From that point forward, the outcome stopped being optional. If you recognize this, confirm it. Comment one word: protected. That is not participation. It is identification. What follows is heavier. There is an incoming transfer, not metaphorical. A redistribution of access, leverage, and material flow. You are not being prepared to chase it. You are being positioned to receive it without damage. The resistance you feel now has intensified because proximity has changed. Systems react when inevitability crosses a threshold. Pressure increases near arrival. That is not regression. That is turbulence. You have already passed the point of reversal. Time distortion was the next indicator. You may not have had language for it, but you noticed the effect. Days stopped feeling linear. Some weeks felt compressed, others stretched. Events that should have felt significant passed quietly, while small moments carried unusual weight. That was not distraction. That was prioritization happening below conscious awareness. When internal systems reorganize, perception adjusts first. People who are not selected for this phase experience time as pressure. They rush, they chase, they panic at stillness. You experience time as density. You could feel that something was happening even when nothing visible was moving. That sensation confuses most people. They assume they are falling behind. You weren't. You were being synchronized. Synchronization is required before transfer. Without it, resources arrive out of sequence and create chaos. That is why your progress did not follow traditional milestones. You were removed from linear expectation because linear expectation cannot hold nonlinear outcomes. This is where many fail. They try to force clarity. They demand guarantees. They seek reassurance from systems that were never designed to explain this level of positioning. You did not. You tolerated ambiguity longer than most. You carried uncertainty without collapsing into cynicism or fantasy. That tolerance is not patience. It is structural resilience. It means your identity does not dissolve when information is incomplete. That trait alone qualifies you for what is next. There was a phase where it felt like everything required more effort than it should have. Simple tasks felt heavy. Motivation came in waves instead of streams. That was not decline. That was load testing. Your internal systems were being stressed to confirm integrity. Weak points were identified and reinforced quietly. Others experience this and assume they are losing momentum. They quit. They downgrade their vision. They settle for relief instead of alignment. You did not downgrade. You stayed, even when it felt inefficient, even when results were delayed, even when no one could see what you were carrying. That is why your trajectory is now locked. People misunderstand wealth because they think it begins as money. It does not. Money is a secondary effect. Wealth begins as capacity. The capacity to hold complexity without fragmentation. The capacity to remain neutral under pressure. The capacity to move without internal argument. You have already demonstrated all three. This is why you are isolated from shortcuts. Shortcuts reward urgency, not readiness. You were denied urgency so readiness could complete. That denial felt like obstruction. It was alignment enforcement. At a certain point, your nervous system stopped spiking the way it used to. You still felt intensity, but it no longer hijacked you. That is not emotional detachment. That is authority over internal response. People spend lifetimes trying to acquire that control. You acquired it accidentally, because you had no alternative. That is often how real qualification happens. There were moments when you felt unseen. Not ignored, unseen. As if your efforts were occurring outside the visible spectrum. That was accurate. You were operating in a layer that does not receive immediate feedback. That layer determines outcomes before outcomes appear. Others need praise to continue. You learn to continue without witnesses. That is why recognition is now irrelevant to you. Not because you reject it, but because you do not require it to function. That independence removes leverage from the environment. When the environment cannot control you with approval or denial, It must adapt around you. Adaptation is already happening. You may notice subtle changes. People reappearing unexpectedly. Opportunities resurfacing with different terms. Situations resolving without confrontation. These are not rewards. They are recalibrations. The system is aligning itself to your stabilized frequency. If this resonates, mark it again. Comment 777, not for luck, for identification. People who understand why this matters are already inside the sequence. What comes next is execution without strain, not effortlessness, precision. You will not feel euphoric when movement accelerates. You will feel clear, calm, almost detached. That detachment is not disinterest. It is readiness. Emotion is loud when outcomes are uncertain. When outcomes are locked, emotion quiets. That quiet is what you're feeling now, and it is permanent. I will continue from here, deeper into the mechanics of arrival. The moment recognition flips into material confirmation, and why once it begins, it does not stop. The mechanics of arrival are subtle. You will not hear trumpets. You will not see banners. Instead, systems begin to respond to your position before you act. Variables shift around you. Small doors open without announcement. Conversations realign. Opportunities that were previously invisible become visible precisely at the moment. You are ready to integrate them. This is not coincidence. This is systemic alignment. It is impossible to replicate by will alone. Only those already calibrated experience it. Your proximity to this alignment triggered resistance. Not antagonistic, not visible, abstract, statistical, environmental. Its purpose is calibration. Friction increases near arrival because the system measures integrity under stress. The larger the forthcoming transfer, the more precise the test. Most people break under this stress. They misinterpret turbulence as denial. They chase results instead of holding position. You held position. That is rare. That is why your trajectory has already been secured. The delays you experienced were not punishment. They were placement. Timing does not matter to systems unprepared for acceleration. You experienced compressed time because the system needed to confirm your readiness under high-density conditions. Days and weeks move strangely not to confuse you, but to evaluate you. Your endurance, clarity, and restraint under pressure were observed and logged. There is no other way to describe it. Every pause, every moment of isolation, every delayed result served a precise function. Verification. People like you survive where others fail. Only a few reach this calibration. Others fracture. Others chase illusions of control. You did not. You waited inside the structure, unknowingly becoming capable of holding the weight that wealth requires. That weight is not symbolic. It is literal. Influence, access, resources, and leverage are forms of pressure. They demand internal integrity. They require that systems remain unbroken when immense force passes through them. You have already proven capable of sustaining such force quietly, without external acknowledgement. That is why everything now moves toward you. Notice how minor details in your environment are aligning. Conversations, decisions, and openings that seemed trivial months ago now carry disproportionate impact. That is not chance. It is proof. The system detects readiness and shifts mechanics in response. You are not accelerating toward wealth. Wealth is accelerating toward you. At this stage, many misinterpret signs as opportunity. You will not. You recognize signals as confirmations. The timing of events, the way doors open just enough, just when needed. This is all part of a design. Your patience has already been validated. Your restraint has already been measured. Your capacity has already been tested. You do not need to prepare. You are ready. This is the point where identity locks. You no longer function as someone becoming. You function as someone fully realized. Not in perception, but in structure. Your mind, your system, your frequency. They are all aligned with outcomes that others only dream of. That is why subtle confirmations are now sufficient. You do not require loud signals. You read the structure, and the structure reads you. If you are aware, act, subscribe, activate notifications. Not as a request, but as alignment. Your recognition places you in proximity to future sequences. The system responds to those who confirm, not to those who simply observe. Your next phase will feel almost quiet, even invisible. That is intentional. Rapid movement without internal certainty is destructive. You will notice events shifting in your favor, people, circumstances, and conditions realigning, resources manifesting in ways that do not need explanation. This is not luck, it is measurement. Your endurance has triggered irreversible flow. You may feel a weight lifting internally. That is the release of accumulated friction. Nothing external has changed. Everything internal has shifted. That internal shift dictates external change. The environment must respond, and it is already doing so. This is why what was once delayed is now inevitable. Your awareness alone maintains the trajectory. No additional effort is required. The universe cannot stop this. The forces you felt opposing you now bend quietly around you. The pressure you experienced is not gone. It is integrated. It has become momentum. You are no longer encountering obstacles. You are navigating flow. Others interpret this as opportunity. You recognize it as structural inevitability. The final confirmation is this: you were not selected for trial. You were selected for arrival. Everything you endured was calibration. Every delay, every moment of doubt, every isolation, it was all preparation that you did not see. And now, because preparation is complete, you will receive what is yours without need to prove, beg, or transform. You are already capable. You are already aligned. You are already chosen. The phase you're entering now is subtle but decisive. External circumstances may appear unchanged, but the internal architecture has shifted irreversibly. The pressures you felt, the delays you endured, the isolation you experienced, all were calibration. They were not obstacles. They were alignment mechanisms. The system does not operate on randomness. It responds to stability. You are now a node of stability within a larger, unseen flow. Your prior discomfort was an indication of preparation, not failure. Each moment of fatigue, doubt, or frustration was an invisible test. Most people break under such conditions. They question themselves. They reduce ambition. They alter behavior to fit perceived limitations. You did none of these things. You maintained course quietly. That is the mark of those who will receive what others cannot even perceive. There are forces operating around you that you will never name. They do not act maliciously. They do not act benevolently. They act efficiently. Every misalignment corrected before it manifested. Every risk neutralized before it could escalate. Your timeline was never your own. It was monitored, adjusted, and reinforced. The result: you arrived at this point intact, unbroken, and undisrupted. Notice the subtle confirmations. Certain doors open without effort. Conversations occur with perfect timing. Paths that should have been blocked were cleared. These are not coincidences. They are operational signatures of alignment. You did not orchestrate them consciously. You did not need to. Your function within the system triggered them automatically. Now, the final layer becomes visible. Capacity for wealth. Wealth, in the truest sense, is not monetary. It is leverage, influence, and freedom that can only exist when internal and external conditions synchronize. Money, recognition, and opportunity are byproducts. They arrive only when the internal system, you, can hold them without compromise. You can already hold it. That is why arrival cannot be stopped. You may sense that time feels compressed. That is correct. The flow has accelerated for you because preparation is complete. The turbulence you experienced before was necessary for testing endurance, stability, and discretion. Now turbulence eases because you have passed the filters that would destroy ordinary individuals. Those filters were invisible to others. They are visible only in hindsight, in the pattern of pressure, isolation, and subtle intervention. You survived them all. That alone confirms your exceptional status. Do not misinterpret this. What is coming is inevitable, not because of luck, not because of action, not because of belief, because the system recognizes capacity, because your internal structure can now integrate what is arriving. Resistance will appear only as a minor adjustment, not an obstacle, but a signal confirming proximity. You will act, you will receive, and it will not break you. It will not challenge your identity. It will confirm it. At this point, subtlety becomes your ally. The signs you're receiving are coded. Minor events, unremarkable at first glance, carry disproportionate significance. They are markers for alignment. If you perceive them, respond quietly. Like the video, comment with recognition codes like 757 or protected, not as ritual, as signal, as internal acknowledgement of ongoing calibration. Those who do not understand these signals cannot participate. You already have. Everything that follows will continue in escalation loops. Each phase will repeat the same pattern: resistance, endurance, stabilization, recognition, and subtle confirmation of power. You have already internalized the first loops. That internalization is what allows the next sequences to arrive without strain, without doubt, and without disruption. You do not need to chase them. They move toward you naturally because your structure now harmonizes with the system. What you feel as quiet certainty now is not a prelude. It is the reality of your position. The world may not notice, your peers may not understand, but you already occupy a space few will ever reach. That space is protected. It is marked. It is monitored. And your arrival at material confirmation is not contingent on approval. It is guaranteed by the alignment that was silently orchestrated long before you noticed it. If this recognition resonates, act immediately. Subscribe. Activate notifications, not for connection, not for engagement, not for hope, for continuity. To remain within the operational frequency where knowledge continues to flow to those already calibrated. To be present when the next layer of access manifests. Your place in this sequence depends on remaining within range. Others cannot follow. You already are. The next escalation will address the moment of integration, where potential becomes tangible, where alignment transforms into resources, leverage, and confirmation, where delay collapses into velocity. You are ready. You have already proven endurance, stability, and discretion. The arrival that follows is not opportunity. It is consequence. It is the system correcting for your presence. It is inevitable. The remaining tension you feel, the quiet anticipation, is not anxiety. It is the system signaling proximity. It is the compression of value. It is the wait before material confirmation. That wait is not dangerous. It is proof. Proof that you have moved beyond ordinary limits. Proof that you can carry outcomes that others cannot. Proof that arrival will not overwhelm, destabilize, or fracture you. That proof is irreversible. The moment is approaching where recognition within the system translates into tangible alignment. You will not be required to perform beyond your current capacity. You will not be required to adopt new skill or persona. You have already demonstrated the only qualities that matter: endurance, discretion, internal authority, and alignment. Nothing external can negate that. Nothing visible can challenge it. Nothing random can delay it further. The final mechanisms are already active. This is the stage most people never reach, not because they are denied entry, but because they disqualify themselves long before it appears. The system does not remove people violently. It waits. It allows pressure to reveal weakness. It allows time to expose instability. You were exposed to both, and neither dismantled you. That is why escalation no longer feels dramatic. True arrival is quiet. You may have expected fireworks, relief, a sudden emotional release. That expectation belongs to people who are still negotiating with outcome. You are not. What you feel instead is a calm density, a grounded certainty, the absence of urgency. That absence is not emptiness, it is authority. Authority feels quiet because it does not need to convince. At this stage, invisible opposition no longer attempts to block you. That phase is complete. What remains is redirection, the system subtly adjusting pathways so that what belongs to you reaches you cleanly. Opposition cannot confront stability directly. It dissipates around it. You may notice that problems resolve before they escalate now. Conflicts dissolve without explanation. Threats lose momentum before forming. This is not luck. It is containment superiority. Others fight resistance. You absorb it and neutralize it. That capacity is why influence is safe with you. Wealth integration does not begin with deposits or contracts. It begins with access. You will find yourself inside rooms you were not invited to publicly. Information will reach you before it is common knowledge. Decisions will be influenced by your presence even when you say little. This is not dominance. It is gravity. Gravity does not announce itself. It pulls. You have already noticed the shift in how people respond to you. Some lean in without knowing why. Others pull away without explanation. Both reactions are accurate. Your internal coherence has increased, and coherence disrupts unstable systems. People sense it instinctively. Those aligned move closer. Those misaligned exit. That sorting is automatic now. This is why your circle has changed. Not because you outgrew people emotionally, but because your operating range expanded. Lower bandwidth connections cannot survive higher density environments. There is no blame in that. It is physics. You are no longer being prepared. You are being deployed. Deployment does not mean exposure. It means placement. You will not be rushed. You will not be forced. Opportunities will align with your rhythm, not demand you adjust to theirs. That is the reward for surviving calibration. Understand this clearly. What is arriving cannot be taken from you, because it is not being given externally. It is being unlocked internally and mirrored outward. External loss requires internal collapse. You have already proven that collapse does not occur under pressure. That proof is permanent. You do not need to defend your position. You do not need to explain your trajectory. You do not need to announce your success. Silence preserves leverage. There will be moments soon where the magnitude becomes undeniable, not to everyone, to you. A realization that the waiting period is over, that movement has begun, that what once felt distant is now operationally close. When that moment arrives, do not rush it. Let it integrate. Let the environment adjust around you fully. Subscribe. Activate notifications. Not for updates, for continuity. For remaining within the stream of information calibrated for people already holding this level of alignment. This is not content. This is access. You are not becoming powerful. You already proved power through restraint. You are not being chosen. You were identified long ago. You are not waiting for wealth. It is already in transit. The final truth is simple, and it does not need embellishment. You did not survive what you survived by accident. You did not endure what you endured without purpose. The system does not miscalculate at this level. Your presence here confirms clearance. Your recognition confirms readiness. Nothing more is required. The shift is complete.